الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope everyone's doing good, Insha'Allah. I just got done watching this debate here between Daniel Haqiqatjou and this piece of crap kid. Now, you'll know why if you watch this debate, why I'm calling him a piece of crap. But Alhamdulillah, I'm a Muslim, so obviously, I know that Daniel absolutely dominated in the debate. Now, as for this guy, this guy right here is a loser. Yeah. And because this guy is such a loser, I'm going to have to put this up here because I am absolutely disgusted with this guy's performance. This guy was using profanities like it was just normal. I mean, he was insulting so many people. He was insulting Daniel. He called them. I'm not gonna. Anyways, this guy is just horrible. This is not a good look for atheism whatsoever. At all. There are people who are respectable. Just because people aren't Muslims and they might be atheists or Christians, Jews, whatever it might be. There should be a level in which you conduct yourself. No one's saying that you have to be like the most moral, upstanding person in the world. But man, like the women that were watching the debate, I felt like these women, whether they be sisters or not, they must have felt embarrassed, at the stuff that this guy was saying. Right? Anyways, so Daniel, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, brother. I think you did a great job. I'm going to be playing the video at 1.5 speed for the sake of time. We'll probably do about 30 minutes. I'm not going to be jumping around. I'm just going to give the first, right around the first 30 minutes of the debate here. And then if you'd like, you can go over to the Muslim Skeptic on YouTube, Insha'Allah, and watch the entirety of the debate. Now, it gets really, really saucy during questions and answers. That's when it gets really bad, right? But like I said, if you want, you go over to Daniel's channel, watch the debate, and don't say I didn't warn you. Anyways, let's get to it.
Stick to non-religious arguments for the purpose of the debate. The main secular argument against pornography is best explained by looking at the research of Nicolaas Tinbergen, a Dutch biologist. Tinbergen did experiments with butterflies. He realized that female butterflies attract males due to the eye-catching designs on their wings. So Tinbergen made some cardboard butterflies and painted their wings to be super eye-catching, more eye-catching than what would naturally occur in female butterflies. Surprisingly, the male butterflies would swarm the cardboard butterflies, even when real female butterflies were available. The males would ignore those females and instead keep trying to mate with the cardboard. Tinbergen called this a supernormal stimulus. By artificially enhancing the normal, Tinbergen could fundamentally transform the behavior of the butterflies. Basically, he tricked the butterflies to abandon the females and instead spend all their time trying to mate with cardboard. And of course, if those exciting cardboard butterflies were not removed, then those males could never reproduce, and as a result, the entire butterfly population would die out. You see where I'm going with this? Pornography is the exact same thing. It's the exact definition of a supernormal stimulus. That's not my conclusion, by the way. That's the conclusion of neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists. That is one of the biggest harms of pornography. It derails normal human sexuality in the same way that colorful cardboard can derail butterfly sexuality. Look, I think whether you're religious or not religious, most of us agree that long-lasting, committed relationships, such as marriage, are very important for human happiness and the overall well-being of society. Second, I think most of us also agree that stable, healthy families are very important for human happiness and the overall well-being of society. Now, if we can agree on the importance of committed relationships and family, then my argument is simply that pornography prevents these two things and is therefore harmful. I ask the audience directly, do you want to have a loving spouse who will offer you companionship and sexual intimacy? Pornography prevents this. Do you one day dream of being a mother or father with loving children and grandchildren to care for and spend time with, who care for you in your old age? Pornography prevents this. Do you care about the future of society, a society that mainly consists of happy marriages and healthy, stable families? Pornography prevents this or greatly hinders it. Numerous peer-reviewed studies prove why and how all this is the case. Biologically rooted sexual drives, attitudes, and behaviors are crucial for marital, familial, and communal relationships. These are the things which have been the foundation of human society throughout history. But pornography disrupts all this. This is because porn usage produces psychological transformations which deeply impact sexual drives, attitudes, and behaviors. There are three major ways that this happens. The first way pornography disrupts human sexuality is that it changes our norms and values. This is huge. What people see as good and normal gets warped by porn in the same way that what a butterfly sees as normal gets warped by artificial cardboard. Empirical studies show how the porn user's values change. Porn causes people to see sex as a recreational act for personal pleasure without any long-term commitment. It causes people to view non-committed, non-heterosexual sex positively, things like sex with strangers, group sex, incest, etc. It causes people to accept when others engage in uncommitted sex pre-marriage.
I think there's something wrong with him because like he kind of goes into like these chuckling fits where he just like giggles like a little girl, as if what Daniel is saying doesn't make any sense or it's invalid. Just kind of trying to uh, diminish his argument. Like I said, I think something is wrong with him.
Marital sex, extramarital sex, etc., rather than stigmatize such behavior. Basically, pornography promotes sexual behaviors that are contrary to stable, committed relationships and family. Due to biologically rooted learning mechanisms, humans unconsciously imitate behaviors and accept norms which they see as widely practiced around them. This is known as social conformity and is linked to certain hormones like oxytocin. Media of any kind is powerful because it affects what people believe is widespread and causes individuals to unconsciously imitate and accept norms they observe performed on TV and the internet. Studies also show that humans are highly inclined to imitate and accept behaviors they see when they're children. And in fact, with the growth of internet availability, huge amounts of pornography are now consumed by children from 6 years of age and up. And the amount of porn consumed is only increasing with time. So all of this porn exposure results in masses of people who, to a much lesser extent, associate sex with committed long-term relationships and producing children. This in itself is a major psychological shift in the population caused by porn that affects people's behaviors and their attitudes. The second way that pornography disrupts sexuality is that it destroys the motivation for pair bonding and family. Porn and masturbation go hand in hand. Those who watch porn come to depend on porn watching coupled with masturbation to fulfill their sexual drives. This results in spending less time trying to find mates. Porn watchers engage in frequent masturbation, which ensures that their sex drive remains relatively low. With low sex drive, they're not motivated to find mates or to do the things that would make them more attractive for prospective mates. Again, this is exactly like the butterflies. Pornography is a supernormal stimulus that derails people from normal sexuality. This results in fewer marriages, fewer pair bonds, which results in fewer children and fewer families. The third way that pornography disrupts sexuality is that it causes people who are already in committed relationships to have lower quality relationships. A meta-study published in 2020 in the Archives of Sexual Behavior found that pornography usage was strongly correlated with less satisfaction in marriage, less happiness, etc. Furthermore, studies show that pornography consumption is associated with people feeling dissatisfied with their partners and eventually cheating on them. One study, for example, tracked couples over a 6-year period and found that of all the factors considered, porn consumption was the second strongest indicator that a marriage would suffer. Also, pornography has been tied to an unprecedented epidemic of sexual dysfunctions in otherwise healthy men who, because of their porn usage, suffer from erectile dysfunction, diminished libido, and less satisfaction when having sex with their partners. So these are three major ways pornography usage harms pair bonding and family. To make matters worse, neuroscientific data shows that viewing pornography leads to addictive behavior akin to the use of hard drugs like cocaine. Addictive behavior produces massive changes to brain structure, including structures related to self-control and desire. This does not happen with behaviors like breathing or drinking water, but it does happen with the use of drugs and pornography. Addictive behavior like porn watching has especially powerful effects during childhood, as the child's brain is more malleable in terms of neuroplasticity. The average age which children are exposed to porn nowadays is 10 years old. Now consider this. If I asked you whether it is bad for society if a drug as addictive as cocaine or heroin were freely available to the masses, including young children, and it was easily accessible, wouldn't you think, wow, this is really bad for society? This is exactly the situation with pornography. In many countries throughout the world, large percentages of adults have never been in a relationship and remain as virgins.
I have to check. What time are we on?
In Japan, for example, according to government data,
a minute in.
I don't know why he did this. This is the moderator's job. I mean, Daniel obviously is going to mention something about this, but come on, Vashi, like, don't be silly, right?
15 seconds left. Just making sure.
Yeah, the moderator usually says that. In Japan, for example, according to government data, about half of single men and women under age 34 are virgins, yet Japan has one of the highest rates of porn consumption in the world. Other countries have similar trends. Marriage and family are collapsing the world over. Not all of it is due to pornography, but porn has played a significant role. To conclude, I just want to note that Islam has unique and detailed rules about relationships, gender roles, dress, that promote stable, loving families and marriage. Islam provides a detailed blueprint for marriage and family, and this has never been as important as it is now simply because people's understanding of gender roles, marriage, family, sex have been warped by modernity. I just want to make this point because my message is not just that porn is destructive. It's one thing to point out the disease, but it's also important to point out the cure. If you want a proven model for marriage, family, and community, Islam provides that. Thank you.
With that, we're going to kick it.
Like I said, this guy, he's an idiot. Yeah, and he absolutely does not like understand anything, but whatever. Let's keep going. Tom jumped. Although, you know, he was quite silly in his argumentation and his manners, I would much rather, you know, Daniel debate somebody like this because I promise you, this guy, if you watch this debate, you'll see absolutely disgusting. This guy is just not, he's not it for the atheist community at all. Find somebody else, guys.
Thank you. Ooh, we got a lot to go over. Muslim men, of course, being such coomers that they need morality police to make sure women aren't exposing their faces because they can't control themselves in the presence of a female flesh. I don't know if that's the healthiest attitude one might take towards, you know...
This guy's dumb, bro. So the prescription is on both the men and the woman. And I would ask you to stop blaming, you know, Islam for, you know, the woes of people and what people do, right? So in order to try and, I guess, debunk Islam or something like this, you would have to actually read our books, our sources, and then come at us from a, you know, moral standpoint. But obviously, the way this guy's talking, it sounds like he doesn't really know anything. And that's typical, right? So the prescription is on both the man and the woman. The man lowers the gaze, the woman covers up. Very simple. And, you know, that men also have their hijab and their clothing that they're supposed to be wearing, right? Obviously, he doesn't know that.
The opposite sex, but whatever template we want to go with. All right, so the problem with everything that you just said, in addition to a collection of statistical errors, like the correlation causation one, which is a classic, to the it's different therefore bad one, to the we're not considering the implicit alternative to porn, which is the social resources which would be required to entirely ban porn, something that has never succeeded anywhere in any country on earth since the advent of the internet. Leaving aside all of that, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you're only using empirical metrics as a way of supplementing your real position, which is a fundamental ideological opposition to morality. We'll get to that, but first we can take apart the other bits. So a lot of this was correlation causation bullshit. A lot of the stuff surrounding the research into porn addiction provides results which are comparable to a great many things that humans have potentially unhealthy relationships towards. Food, for example. Depending on a person's relationship to food, regular old food, not even drugs, they can have incredibly destructive outcomes, addictive behaviors, life-ruining stuff. No one would ever talk about banning food, of course, because it's a fundamental human necessity. But if you take a look at how we interact with a great many things, you'll find similar patterns. When humans like something, we have a tendency to fall into habits of engaging in it to an unhealthy extent. This has been the case for all of human society. It's not new. The reason why we hear about this with regards to pornography so often is A, moralistic opposition, and B, because the advent of internet pornography happens to coincide with another demographic change, and people tend to conflate their outcomes, namely the fact that the birth rates are falling and marriage is becoming less popular. It should be noted, of course, that I don't think marriage is in and of itself a necessary institution. It's not inherent to the human character. We were running around just fine as Neanderthals, clubbing, I don't know, snow leopards and not marrying people. Whatever form of social organization people want to engage in is the one that I support, and I think it's entirely possible to simultaneously support healthy relationships without trying long arm of the state down on pornography, an act which in every country which it has ever been practiced has led to incredibly authoritarian outcomes, something which I am principally opposed to. At the end of the day, humans exist for the benefit of humans. Some people, usually of the authoritarian disposition, like to gesture at some nebulous social benefit that you can get out of forcing people to behave in a certain way. But often in doing so, they neglect to mention the human cost. For example, stable marriages are good for society because stability in general is good for society. I mean, even if marriages involve 3 people, if those were stable, they would be good for society. But one of the big reasons why marriages have historically been so stable is because women have had no political rights. You need look no further than the Muslim world to see examples of this. Of course, your marriages are stable. You can't get a divorce. People are married off sometimes.
That's a blatant lie. I think he's got us confused with Christianity. So Christianity, you're not allowed to divorce for nothing, unless, of course, it's adultery. In which case you can divorce, right? Um, in Islam, the woman can divorce for any reason that she wants. There's, I mean, respectively, we should be, if women are gonna get divorced, they should be getting divorced, for real reasons, right? But yes, divorce is allowed in Islam, and that is conducive to the human nature. But like I said, he sounds like someone who doesn't know anything about Islam. Let's keep going.
Times before the age of 18, arranged marriages where people are pressured out of their social spaces and communities if they don't follow the orders of their parents and marry the people that have been lined up for them. Of course you have stability there. It's because you have no freedom, obviously, It's like bragging about the stability of like the Nazi.
And by the way, over 1400 years ago, women were given, rights, right? The first martyr of Islam was a woman. Our beloved mother Aisha radiallahu anha was the first scholar of Islam. Khadija was the first Muslim. There are many, many more instances. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, stopped the practice of burying female babies, right? Like I said, this guy is clueless. In fact, it wasn't until like maybe, and I hope I'm right about this, because I just read something on this. I think it was yesterday about how women in England uh, were finally given the right to own land in about the 1700s or something of this nature. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but it's quite recent, considering that, Islam or the advent of Islam was over 1400 years ago, right? So all you have to do is a little bit of research and you will see that, Islam literally gave women rights. This guy is clueless.
German hierarchical order. Well, of course it's internally stable. They get shot if they don't follow it. You see this all the time, especially in American history. Being an American, of course, I'm biased towards those discussions. But you see people going like, oh, yes, well, people, nowadays everyone's getting divorced and women initiate most of the divorces. If they want a divorce, good for them. You know why they weren't divorcing before? Because it wasn't legal for women to open their own bank accounts up until the 1970s. At least not.
He just proved my point. Just proved my point. He said it wasn't until the 1970s that women weren't allowed to get divorced because they couldn't open up bank accounts. He literally just shot himself in the foot. Come on, man. Think about yourself and what you're saying. Let's be consistent here, bro. Vashi.
Consistently. Of course, if you put a gun to people's heads and force them to behave in a certain way, then you might get generally reliable outcomes in that one metric, but that doesn't mean society is better. It means it's worse because people's freedoms are being infringed on. They're less happy, less able to act. You get a nice, clean, pretty slate from the outside. And I think that's what you want, right? Like, that's why you were telling Islam at the end there. Gender relations in Muslim countries are fraught with bias and bigotry, rape, legal oppression. But it all looks nice and clean from the outside because you get to keep your divorce rates at zero, looks nice and consistent, nice and clean. But society is not experienced from the top down, it's experienced from the bottom up. We have to consider what people actually want. And what people want is to jerk off to porn. They love jerking off to porn. It is a undeniable fact of the human experience.
I told you that, this guy is very, very explicit and he's very vulgar. And this is the manner in which he came into this debate slash discussion. And the end gets really, really nasty. So just fair warning, me personally, I want people to see this, not, kids or whatever, but I want people to see this. I want people to see that this is the type of people that they have in their faith or it is a faith, right? In their belief system of atheism. You've lost the plot, Vosh.
One which has been around for hundreds of years in whatever form pornography has taken, that people like cooming. Every effort to take this away from people has failed. There are no countries that are not full of degenerate coomers. Osama bin Laden had like risque anime, titillation on his computer. All of them do. You do. They all do. Everyone does. It's a fact of modern life. Some people pretend they don't when they're LARPing as some kind of like tradcath or whatever. But in reality, where we all live, the idea of like eradicating this from the public space is entirely unrealistic and would only be done to suit some kind of city skylines-esque, top-down, paternalistic idea of authoritarian goodness, where if you can line everyone up like Tetris blocks and they behave the way you expect them to, you get some kind of positive outcome on paper. If you want to help people who have porn addictions, by the way, there are lots of things you can do to like meaningfully improve that. Porn addiction is a real problem, as are many other kinds of addictions. But as somebody who favors drug decriminalization, I don't think the state is the solution. Has it been the solution for drugs? No. We have an unprecedented drug problem here in the States, despite committing tens of billions to fighting it. If you really want to help people, you have to try to find what it is they're actually looking for and provide that to them. A lot of porn addicts are suffering from a kind of social alienation, which I think is brought about by capitalism and some other factors. Drug addicts lacking in appropriate medical care, job opportunities. There are a number of things. We can walk, down any street in Midwestern America and see the consequences of our attitude towards drug criminalization. Let's see what we can actually do for those people, and for porn addicts as well. We'll see what we can actually do for them. There are plenty of metrics by which we can improve their lives.
So I want to address some of these points.
Sure. Let's go one at a time. I like talking.
Okay, I'll try to be respectful of equal time. So the first point, correlation is not causation. I agree, but there are many studies that are longitudinal in nature that actually do indicate causation. Right, so that is, there are many studies that I kind of alluded to in my opening statement, which I'm happy to go over if you want more details. But some of them, yes, they are cross-sectional, and therefore it is correlation or causation. Doesn't imply causation, we can't know. But some of them, many of the most significant, are longitudinal, so they do show causation over time. So that's one point. And
but also, even then, it should be worth noting that for something like why one might look for pornography in a relationship, it might be difficult to understand what the instigating factor was. So a person can report satisfaction in a relationship, not consume pornography, but then as things in the relationship get kind of worse and they feel kind of distant from their partner, they start to look at porn, and they look at porn because they're dissatisfied, not necessarily the other way around. But from a study's perspective, it's really difficult to chart which one caused which.
Well, these studies do show that. Like these studies are set, the longitudinal ones are set to determine causation. So
I'm familiar with the limitation of longitudinal studies. They don't make the correlation causation fallacy disappear. They can track behaviors over long term, but when you're talking about nebulous characteristics like psychological influence, it is legitimately very, very difficult to parse out what is happening and why.
I mean, this is yeah, you can say that about any kind of factor that you want to study in science. It's hard to parse out what is actually the causative factor. So the job of the researcher and the scientist, in order to publish peer-reviewed research and say, hey, pornography actually leads to relationships breaking up, it leads to higher dissatisfaction. Part of the barrier of whether this is publishable research is to justify that through statistical means, through all kinds of experiment setup, double-blind studies. All of this is part of the research process. So I don't see how what you're saying disagrees with that.
I'm fully familiar with the research process. I have a sociology degree. The issue is that for something like this topic in particular,
he doesn't act like it.
Self-reporting is the only metric by which you can measure something like the health of a relationship. If people self-report, say, on the cause of their porn usage, you're also relying on their degree of introspection, which is not reliable. But when you're looking at the development of these things, people don't really have a great assessment of why they act the way they do. And I have seen a good deal of research on pornography and its effects on people. And obviously, I don't want to debate with you like specific studies because then we get really in the weeds on a broad topic. But I'm only pointing out that, like, from what I have seen, the idea of a sort of consistent, direct, causative relationship has not been demonstrated in the research that I've looked at. Certainly, there are relationships. I wouldn't deny that. Even if there were causative relationships, I don't necessarily think that's a defeater for my positions. But it is complicated. I only mean to say that because it can be very easy to paint a consistent and clear brush when looking from afar.
I mean, I agree that it's complicated, but all these studies are showing that there is a negative impact to relationships, but we can put that point aside. I would also, if you want to look at causation, there are biologically rooted mechanisms that are causal in nature that I described, because pair bonding, and pair bonding is not something that's only valued by Muslims. Like, this is something that every society throughout history has valued, even if they haven't technically called it marriage. But the idea of a committed relationship with a person, like a soulmate, or a committed relationship over time, that is something that's valued universally. It's not just a Muslim thing, and it's not just like a modern thing. It's something that's throughout history with human society. But if you look at pair bonding, sex is what creates that kind of pair bond, because oxytocin is released when there's orgasm by male or female and touch through the skin. The skin touching is what generates oxytocin, and that's something that does not exist with masturbation to pornography. You cannot create that kind of pair bond. And
that doesn't exist for any kind of masturbation, though, whether or not you have pornography.
That's true, I agree.
Well, then that's fine. You masturbate from time to time, and it doesn't contribute to your God-given soulmate potential. No, and then one day you do lay into a girl, and then it does.
No, but the causal relation there is that when you ejaculate, that without,
You see how Daniel used the word ejaculate? That would be a euphemism for other words. This guy has no such filters. You'll see what I mean.
That pair bond through oxytocin, you have lower sex drive, so you're not motivated to actually go seek a pair bond.
You can't keep people from masturbating, whether they have pornography or not. Humans have written on masturbation for as long as we have written language. If you plan on making that illegal, I don't know how you would do that. Some kind of 1984-esque telescreen in every living room. Probably best to leave people's nuts to themselves, in a legal sense.
Well, I do want to distinguish porn plus masturbation as its own distinct phenomenon because of this whole supranormal stimulation that is created through pornography. It's habit forming. It creates this frequent masturbation, which results in frequent ejaculation. So I do think if you're perpetually, the the goodness for the prostate is just through ejaculation, which you can get through many other means other than masturbation. But the point is that your
what you
lower
just
sex
said,
drive makes you less motivated to actually go seek out a pair bond or relationship, whether you want to get married or not. Like
but
the stats on yeah. So when
we'll
we
keep trying it. We can.
Sorry,
we're both
I'll
on a
shut
narrow
up.
bridge here. No, I'm just saying like that would apply to any masturbation, right? Like if you're like at lower sex drive, a disinterest in seeking out a sex partner. I feel that after I jerk off, whether I'm looking at porn or not, you jerk off once or twice a day or whatever, like God intended us to. But that's just life, right? Like I think that for most healthy people, like you can jerk off one day and then want to like fuck somebody the next. It's like a quick rebound on this, Some people have lower sex drives, but I don't think the ability to masturbate, like, because we've always been doing that, right? Like monkeys do that.
Yeah, I follow what you're saying, and I agree that masturbation has existed way before pornography. But do you agree that pornography is a different kind of stimulus? Like it is a heightened kind of stimulus, just like in the butterfly example. Like it's because of, and the factors that the researchers point out is that pornography has this kind of accelerated novelty because people can access lots of different kinds of pornography that has not been possible, like historically, because of the lack of technology. Like,
yeah, we got wacky stuff these days. No, I agree. It's a more extensive kind of erotic stimulation than anything your imagination could conjure up, like, or at least it has the potential to, like it's a quick template to that. But I would say the same thing about like candy, like food used to taste like shit, well, not really, like you could cook meat and it would be fine, but generally speaking, the medieval peasants subsisted on gruel. Okay, it wasn't a great life. Nowadays, you can go down to the grocery store and for $4 you can pick up a chocolate cupcake that, if eaten by a Dickensian orphan, would immediately cause them to explode. And people get fat off that shit, right? Like it tastes so good, people get hooked on it. That's a real problem. A lot of folks are fat over that. But you can't ban the cupcake. It's just you have to learn to live in a world where those resources are available and teach people to be moderate about it.
I completely agree with you that this is like the same kind of argument applies to certain kinds of food. But the thing about foods as well, because of processing and the ability to highly process foods, and you have entire food scientists whose entire job is to artificially manipulate food in order to make it as tasty and addictive as possible, because it generates this dopamine rush in an artificial way. So I agree with you that
what's an artificial dopamine rush? I mean, if it's tasty, it's tasty. Right?
Artificially induced, because the natural food, like if you picked up, even like with even white sugar that you're using in desserts like a cupcake, the processed version of the cupcake has been actually over-engineered to artificially induce even more dopamine, which is why a lot of people are addicted to junk food, and certain governments have wanted to curb this kind of processed food because it's making the population obese. This is actually a perfect analogy to pornography.
So would you want to ban chocolate cupcakes?
Artificially engineered.
All food you get at the grocer right now is artificially engineered to some.
He's just, I mean, speaking to the cupcake thing, he's just simply saying that, look, these cupcakes and other products are engineered in such a way that there's no nutrition at all in them. So eating them is very, very harmful. So should we get rid of them? Absolutely, we should. I mean, in England, they actually get rid of all kinds of stuff. There's things that you just cannot use, ingredients that you cannot use in certain foods or in the foods. You just can't use it because England will not allow these ingredients to be used because they know it's harmful.
Extent outside of like the tomatoes or whatever, some degree of processing goes into almost everything we eat for preservative sake, or because, well, I mean, hell, a lot of the fruits and vegetables we eat are GMO. Like they literally got engineered at the DNA level to be tastier to us. So depending like where you draw the line, because that's the question, right? It's like, where do you draw the line? Because we've had wood carvings of people's fat ass titties, since thousands and thousands of years ago. Depending on how far back you want to go, pornography has been around a long time. So when did it get too far, right? Was it when the video file came about, like 240p shit?
You can measure this. It has an empirical effect. Like
folks have gotten fatter lately.
I know, because for the same reasons. Like, so for the same reasons that people are being addicted to pornography, they're being addicted to other artificial stimuli. Video games are another example. Food is another example.
Wait, how much stuff in the world do you want to ban? Just out of curiosity. Video games, food, movies, I assume?
No, I think that these are all of different moral categories. But when it comes to video
games...
Wait,
why?
Or not moral categories, but having different moral weight, I would say. But I mean, my argument doesn't depend on that. I just want to point out that with like app developers develop apps to make them as addictive as possible. I think this is very harmful to society because people can't put their phone apps, can't put down their phones because these apps are hooking them in the same way that casinos hook gamblers because of their slot machines, like specific ways that they designed the casino to play on these biological, psychological proclivities of the human mind.
So I agree with what you're saying. There are things that people do in food.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's watch this clip.
That culture is missing here. So part of what we're trying to do to achieve those goals is like take really big, audacious points of view on the world and then train ourselves to be patient. And it's really, really hard. The entire society is set up to not be patient anymore.
And I'm hearing also a conflict with this like fail fast and learn mentality where if you're taking a deep and big bet, like you want it to be the right one, how do you know when that's true?
I think that fail fast approach works in consumer internet businesses, but I don't think it works for anything that really matters. Basically. Consumer internet businesses are about exploiting psychology. And that is one where you want to fail fast because people are unpredictable, and so we want to psychologically figure out how to manipulate you as fast as possible and then give you back that dopamine hit. We did that brilliantly at Facebook. Instagram has done it. WhatsApp has done it. Snapchat has done it. Twitter has done it. So there are great examples. WeChat is doing it. There are great examples of failing fast is the right path to exploiting psychology of mass populations of people.
I want to bring us back to the point that you were making about exploiting consumer behavior in a consumer internet business. You said that this is a time for soul searching in social media businesses, and you were part of building the largest one. What soul searching are you doing right now on that?
I feel tremendous guilt. I think we all knew in the back of our minds, even though we feigned this whole line of like there probably aren't any really bad unintended consequences. I think in the back, deep recesses of our minds, we kind of knew something bad could happen. But I think the way we defined it was not like this. It literally is a point now where I think we have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. That is truly where we are. And I would encourage all of you as the future leaders of the world to really internalize how important this is. If you feed the beast, that beast will destroy you. If you push back on it, we have a chance to control it and rein it in. And it is a point in time where people need to hard break from some of these tools and the things that you rely on. The short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works. No civil discourse, no cooperation, misinformation, mistruth. And it's not an American problem. This is not about Russian ads. This is a global problem.
Yeah, Daniel's absolutely right here. I agree with him 100%.
Production or how they design gotcha games or what have you, where I think that it goes beyond a desire to produce a product and it goes towards an effort to prey on people's addiction receptors. I think that's a real issue. But the problem is, where do you draw the line? When it comes to food production, I can think of maybe a couple of processes by which you can say, okay, maybe companies, you can't use this chemical, go the extra 1/100 of a cent more expensive per unit produced, and we'll call it there. When it comes to how the gotcha games or casinos, you can think of like common sense legislation to try to curtail some of the more extremely addictive predatory elements here. So where's the line on pornography? Because so for me, as somebody with an entirely healthy relationship to pornography, if I want to look at fat titties or whatever, I can just look at the fat titties, and then I can just go, some good fat titties, and then I can just leave, walk away from the computer. I don't know what would constitute like a pornography addiction like line where none of this, but like the other stuff is fine. What about people who draw fat titties, right? I mean, depending on how abstract the drawing is, you've got a bunch of junior pornographers doodling in their 8th grade notebooks. I know that I was at the time. I guess my question is like, where do you what you're in charge? You're the Ayatollah. You're what's the big guy? The biggest guy?
Khalifa.
In Sunni Islam, there's no biggest guy, but in Shia Islam, I'm not Shia, I'm Sunni. So
okay, then
Yeah, but there is no Khalifa right now. But he's talking about Khalifa. That's what I said. He doesn't really know much about Islam. He just talks against it for no reason. I don't know.
Okay, then not that. Whatever, the big guy, all right? What law? Is it just like you put a drawing up of 2 circles with smaller circles in them and they just come and shoot you? Like, where would you draw the line?
Well, I think before let me answer that question, but first, so you say that it's reasonable for governments to actually restrict processed food, like with real extreme examples of manipulation of food or technology to curb, these kinds of harm. So would you say the same for pornography?
Like I said, this guy is really disgusting. You should have a certain level of decorum and manners and things like this whenever you come into these types of discussion. I'm gonna leave it right there. If you guys want to see the rest of this, go over to Daniel Haqiqatjou's channel, the Muslim Skeptic on YouTube, and tell him I sent ya. And if Daniel, if you're watching, my brother, you did a good job. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. Ameen. And you did show patience with him because he was getting quite disrespectful, bro. And he like calling you names, and then anyways, if, like I said, guys, go over there to the Muslim Skeptic, Insha'Allah, go watch the video, tell him I sent you, give it a like, subscribe, and I guess let me know how it goes next time I do a live stream. I want you guys to tell me what you guys think about it, or even on this video here in the comments. Let me know what it is that you guys think. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you guys later, Insha'Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.